I'm a Palestinian. From 21 until 48, I carried a Palestinian passport. There was no such thing in this area as Jews and Arabs and Palestinians. There were Jews and Arabs.
Don't you... I mean, you deny that there was a Palestine Arab people before, but there is now a Palestine liberation movement. The history of liberation movements are that they grow. Won't this one grow and become in end, in fact, your biggest enemy?
I don't say there are no Palestinians, but I say there is no such thing as a distinct Palestinian people of all the Palestinians who live in Jordan. Why have the Palestinians in the West Bank become more Palestinians since the 5th of June 67 than they were before? Why didn't they set up a Palestinian country in addition to Jordan? Supposing you're...
There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do.
Back in 2017, during the TWEEPS Forum, the UAE finance minister said, and I quote, "The voices we hear are calling for murder and shedding blood and stealing the wealth of people are based in London, Germany, Spain and Italy." He further added, and I quote again, "There will come a day when we see far more radicals, extremists and terrorists coming from Europe because of lack of decision-making and trying to be politically correct," unquote. Now the Saudi and UAE foreign...
I want to change the country where I live. This question might have crossed your mind at least once. Let us assume that you have two options, Israel and Palestine. Which country would you like to live in? One of my colleagues had an option of going to Israel or increase the chances of the visa denial for the Middle East countries. He decided to go to the Israel because he was interested in technology. Perhaps that is how we make the decisions. So today we are going to discuss about the Israel-Palestine issue, and towards the end of the video we would take you to the section where how the world resolves such similar issues. We will take you to Spain, Germany, UK, USA and Japan. So Palestine was created on 15 November 1988. The Palestine National Council proclaimed the establishment of Palestine as a nation. The name Palestina was given by Romans to the land called Judea, which means the land of the Jews. Till the World War I, the legal owner of the land was Ottoman Empire. After that it lost and the region was handed over to the predecessor of United Nations called the League of Nations. The region was handed over to Britain, and the League of Nations wanted Britain to set it aside for Jews. British divided this land into two parts. One was Jordan, it was given to Arabs, and the another portion was kept for Israel. This is where we see Israel today. So in the late 1800s, this piece of land was occupied by Jews, Christians, Arabs and people of many other faiths. So the status of Israel can be divided into three different statuses. One is, let us call this a status number 1, where it is occupied by Jews, Arabs and Christians and probably faiths of many other regions. Then it was occupied by the Ottoman Empire, and then later, after the Ottoman Empire lost in World War I, it was handed over to Britain, which divided it into different regions. Now, based on your point of view, you might want to insist that you would like to keep the status quo for one of these three statuses. Palestine wants to continue with status 2, whereas Israel wants to continue with status 3. Now, in order to have a general understanding of the issue, let us try to look at it from the lens of population growth. And we would try to take examples of countries where there is a minority population and the majority population belongs to the faith of Islam. Let us look at this image. So if you look at this image, you can see the population of minority in Pakistan was approximately 11% in 1947, which has now gone down to 1%. In Bangladesh, the population was 28% in 1947 and which has come down to 8%. In Syria, the population of minority in 1920 was approximately 25%, which came down to approximately 11 to 15% in the year 2010. In Turkey, the population of minority was 20% in the year 1920, whereas in the year 2019, it got reduced to mere 0.2%. We need to ponder about why the population of minority is reaching to such a low levels. And we also have to look at it from the other side, whether this is happening in the other countries which are dominated by the faith of other religion. Let us look at Israel. In 2009, the population of Arab Muslims was 20%, which has come to 21% in the year 2019. In the US, the population data between 2010 and the expectation of growth till 2030 is more than twofolds. In US, the population of people who belong to the faith of Islam is going to grow from 2.6 million in 2010 to 6.2 million by the year 2030. Let us take the example of India. In India, the population of Muslims was approximately 10% in the year 1947, which is now approximately between 15 to 20% in the year 2023. There was a survey which was done by Pew Research Center USA, and this survey was about asking people whether they would like to go for Sharia law in their country. Sharia law is considered to be a fair law in the Islamic world, but it is a very discriminatory law against the people belonging to other faiths, which leads ultimately to ethnic cleansing and legal discrimination. If you look at this survey, it can give us an idea of how Sharia is viewed in all these different countries. Now let us also try to look at it from the lens of freedom struggle. As they say, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So we would try to do a little bit of comparison between different terrorist organizations and how they operate and what is their modus operandi. So generally in the other part of the world, the freedom struggle is waged against the occupying authority and it is not generally targeted at the civilians. There might be some casualties of civilians as well, but the main focus is targeting authority so that they leave their area of occupation. In India, Subhash Chandra Bose and Bhagat Singh were the freedom fighters, and though they were against the authorities, we hardly hear about any incident where they were directly targeting the British civilians. Direct Action Day. The date is 16th August 1946. So Mr. Jinnah wanted to have a separate nation for himself on the basis of religion, and for that he was in continuous discussion with the main party of India, and the discussion was not going anywhere. And for that he decided to take the matter in his own hands and he declared Direct Action Day. This is the day on which the civilians were directly attacked, and rather than protesting with the government and attacking the government authorities or establishments, the civilians were directly attacked. We see the same thing happening in Palestine when Hamas attacked directly the civilians and not the authorities. There was a terrorist organization called LTTE based out of Sri Lanka. There were some internal disturbances and conflict going on between the LTTE and the Sri Lankan government. The Indian government supported the Sri Lankan government and sent troops in Sri Lanka to fight the LTTE. The LTTE did not like this much and they targeted the Indian Prime Minister. The Indian Prime Minister, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, was assassinated in a suicide bomb blast, though there were civilian casualties, but the main target was the government authority. So Even LTTE did not come to India and start bombing the innocent civilians. There is also a dispute between Spain and Catalonia. Catalonia was won over by Spain, and Catalonia has a little bit of different culture than the rest of the Spain. Catalonia also happened to have a better per capita income than the rest of the Spain. Because of these two issues, Catalonia wanted a separate country for itself. But the Catalonians did not go out and start killing their Spaniards, neighbors, and ordinary Spanish citizens. The matter went to the court. Of course, there were a lot of conflicts and a lot of political statements from both the sides, but ultimately the issue reached the court, where there was some kind of resolution which was achieved. India supported Bangladesh in the liberation of Bangladesh. The Pakistani army was committing genocide in Bangladesh, and India intervened and helped Bangladesh liberate itself. But even if you look today, the ordinary citizen of Bangladesh do not have that regard for India. They still seem to be more inclined towards Pakistan. So is this freedom struggle is more about the struggle from the oppression, or is it more about the freedom from the religions of other faith? Let us look at these two images. One of the images is of the funeral of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who was a prominent Indian scientist. You can look at the number of people who attended his funeral. Another is of Yaqub Menon, who was sentenced to death by an Indian court, and look at the number of people attending his funeral. So the humans always keep on fighting with each other, or do they also try to reach to a peaceful solution? So this is how we reach to the section where how the world resolves some of the similar issues which are of great importance. Have you heard a term called German guilt? During World War II, the population of Jews was reduced between 60 to 70% by Hitler. In order to compensate for that, Germany has paid approximately 80 billion euros to Israel till now. And you would wonder, how did Germany reach to this decision of paying the reparation? The next generation of Germans which came after World War II, they started asking questions that when all these gruesome incidents were happening in the country, what were their parents doing? And the parents did not have any answer. This gave the guilt to the Germans. Also, the most important thing is that Hitler was not a German. He was from Austria. And also the state of Israel did not exist when World War II happened. Now, as mentioned earlier also, the dispute between Spain and Catalonia was resolved in the court. Catalonia is a different region and it was won over by Spain. So Catalonian wanted to have a separate identity, a separate country for themselves. But this matter reached the court. Of course, there were a lot of issues and finally it got resolved. So Catalonians did not go out and started bombing and killing ordinary Spanish citizens. India and Pakistan was divided by Britishers in the year 1947. In the partition agreement, India decided to give 80% of the water of Indus River to Pakistan. India took for itself only 20%. Despite being an upstream country, India took less share. Also, Pakistan owes 330 crores of pre-partition debt to India. This amount is without inflation and interest. Despite all of this, Pakistan wants Kashmir and it funds terrorism activities within India to achieve its objectives. Its policy has been in the direction of bleeding India with 1,000 cuts. The sun never set in the British Empire. We must have heard this a lot of times. Britain ruled a large portion of the world, and it was said that the British Empire is so big that the sun never set in the British Empire. India was also one of the colonies of the British Empire. But today, if you look at the relationship between Britain and India, and I'm talking about the people-to-people relationship, the relationship does not seem to be as bad as between India and Pakistan. Though the policies of Britishers killed more than 20 million people in India, there still does not seem to be animosity of that level between the people of Britain and India. So one might ask, how did this happen? We don't have a general narrative coming out of Britain which tells that we ruled this piece of land called India. Whereas in case of Pakistan or the people who belong to the faith of Islam within India, we have heard this rhetoric many times that they ruled India. Also, Britain has paid some reparations in the form of aid to India. One of the universities based out of Britain, Oxford, they invited one of the Indian politician, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, to its campus so that he could present his views on the British occupation of India. This itself gives an idea of how Britain or some of its intellectual think tanks look at India, and they are interested in listening to the position of India on the British occupation. Japan and USA. The only country which has been bombed with a nuclear bomb is Japan, and that was done by USA. If you look at the relationship between the people of USA and the people of Japan, they seem to be getting along okay. Of course, there are certain people in Japan who do not see USA in a positive light, and there are certain complaints they have about USA, but in general, Japan and the people of USA, they are able to get along. So if we look at these examples, we can get some glimpse of how humanity is trying to resolve these complex issues and to at least try to get some solution. But if one party has an agenda, then this becomes very difficult to reach to a solution of a particular problem. And we can see this in Palestine, we can see this in Kashmir, we can also see some protests in France, USA, Sweden, Britain. So to end this video, I would like to quote Golda Meir, the former Israeli Prime Minister: "Peace will come when the Arabs love their children more than they hate us." Also, if you like our work, please do like, comment and subscribe. Thank you.